Hey, today's show sponsor is Lifetime Value Media, run by our very own Dylan Young, who is chief creative. And he's been editing the show for the last few months, and I have absolutely loved what he does. So, of course, I wanted to bring him on as a sponsor. You'll be hearing more from Dylan a little bit later on the show.
When you can say, we're going to create an initiative that's aimed at this cross-sell opportunity. And then you can demonstrate that when users are fully educated, they are more likely to agree to cross-sell or upsell.
Yeah.
Now you're driving revenue. The ones that are ahead here are the ones that have established a definition for an education qualified lead. And now they're testing like the impact of how likely an educated EQL is to convert to SQO than a marketing qualifier.
Once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Experience Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as we explore how digital can help enhance the customer and employee experience. My goal is to share what my guests and I have learned over the years so that you can get the insights that you need to evolve your own digital programs. If you'd like more info, need to get in touch, or sign up for the weekly companion newsletter that has additional articles and resources in it, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. For now, let's get started. And welcome back to the Digital CX Podcast. It's Alex Turkovich. I'm so glad to see you back. Today, we have a phenomenal guest lined up for you in Greg Rose of Intellum, which is a customer education-focused platform. And so naturally, we talk about customer education, but he's also a phenomenal leader and a phenomenal post-sale and revenue leader. So we get into all manner of different things. You may know him from a Pulse talk he gave a few years ago, which is titled "Everything I Learned About Leadership I Learned from Fred Rogers and My Dad." Very entertaining, and he's entertaining on this show as well. So we talk about all kinds of different fun things, including music, customer education. We talk about how YouTube University has kind of replaced mastery in a lot of ways. So very cool, very engaging conversation with Greg Rose that I certainly enjoyed, and I hope you do too. Hey, Greg, I wanted to welcome you to the show. It's been a while. It's been a little bit in the making. We made it happen, but I'm super excited that you're on.
Glad to be here. Yeah, I'm psyched.
Yeah. We learned about each other, I think, kind of tangentially in roughly the same time. But one of the things that we have crazy in common is just music in our history. I think you were saying that you like ran a record label. I went to Berkeley, did the audio engineer thing. And here we are in customer education, customer success, customer post-sale market, whatever we want to call it. Like, here we are. Tell me a little bit about your journey out of music and into like where we are.
So I consider myself an amateur musician. I didn't choose to do that as a career. I have a love for music. It's all around us, all at our house all the time. I did start a record label that was based here in Atlanta, and we ran it for many years. It was awesome. I love the business. I love the bands. I love making music. So all of that was really great. I have a second life, which is growth. And I also, aside from music and dabbling in that space, I also do this growth thing. So from a journey perspective, I think when I'm old, I got out of school at the end of the 90s, and this internet thing was happening. Mm-hmm. Sounded like a good place to go work. I was doing it actually started in advertising in the tech space and jumped into PR pretty quickly because that was the strategy. In the early 2000s, tech brands were growing primarily through media relations, not through advertising. So I got involved in that. I did that for a long time. That kind of transitioned into two things, like broader marketing strategy, and then also a lot of like direct work with customers. Mm. And I think that work with sort of like from a marketing perspective, understanding the customer, understanding the use case, being able to leverage that to present new customers, to demonstrate what's possible with whatever product or service that we're selling at the time, kind of default got me into helping to manage the customer. And so
Yeah,
like
sure.
uh, before I was really aware of things like customer experience, you
Right.
look back, I was doing a lot of that work and just calling it growth.
Hmm.
Um, so that experience kind of runs the gamut across industries. Tech is really the unifying theme. And then about 10 years ago, not nine and some change, I got the opportunity to come to Intellum.
Yeah.
And the Intellum move really let me take all of these experiences and from a brand building perspective and a messaging and positioning perspective, from a customer interaction and management perspective, really pull all those things together under this larger concept and strategy of education.
Hmm.
And for me, I just I sort of landed in something that pretty quickly I realized two things. Like one, I'm very passionate about. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about the ins and outs of education today, and you'll see some of
Sure.
that. But also like just recognizing that I've gotten to the point where I believe that education is marketing and it is support and it is success. It's all of these things rolled up into whatever we want to call it. For me, the term I'm using is customer experience, but I think terminology
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It's about how we support our client.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of table stakes, right? Like,
Mhm.
uh, it's all well and good to like sell a great product and have a great product and all that kind of stuff. But if you're not if you're not teaching them how to fish, then they're not fishing.
Yeah,
That's
right.
cool. So cool. I watched your Pulse talk about. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like everything I learned about leadership from Fred Rogers and my dad, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, that was a good one.
Which I
Yeah.
love the title of, and obviously I love the talk as well. And you bring up some really fascinating points that kind of toe the line between Fred Rogers, but then also like fundamental like brain science and
Yeah, yeah.
talking about the chemicals of the brain and all that kind of stuff. And the whole time I was listening to it, I kept thinking about, okay, yes, everything I learned about leadership, but you could apply the entirety of that talk, which is, I'll link it down below if anybody wants to go watch it, which you should. But the entirety of the talk, I think you could directly apply to customer experience as well,
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
working with customers, because it's the same. I mean, you should be in a leadership position with your customers, and a thought leadership position, but then also from an education standpoint. And one thing that you said that really rung true with me was this notion of like attitudes are caught, not taught, and
Mhm. Yeah,
attitudes should be caught from a brand and CE perspective as
yeah,
well. So I'm
yeah.
curious if you've kind of implemented some of that stuff into your kind of day to day as well, from a customer facing
Um,
perspective.
yeah, I think so. It's interesting to I hadn't thought about this, but to go back to that talk and then kind of like connect the dots into this idea of customer education and customer experience where we're talking about today.
Yeah.
I'll 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 answer it this way. I'll sort of build on, I think, kind of what I was talking about generally from a leadership perspective as it relates to, I think, where we find ourselves today in the broad customer success, customer experience environment.
Yeah.
I'll say something incendiary, and I don't mean to
Bring it.
sound uh, like I'm pointing fingers or anything, but sales has evolved. I think
Hmm.
we're in a new sort of sales motion. I think we've gone past the art of the possible, which is I think a way that we really sort of over the last several years we're really focused on like look at what you can do. I think it's morphed a little bit a trend that I see, and I talk to friends and peers and network folks about this too, to ensure that I'm not making this up, that it's actually it's actually really happening. I have a lot of people saying yes, they agree. I think from a sales perspective, we're doing a little bit of brain science manipulation. And I think what we're doing is tapping into the personal motivations, the career growth, and the aspirations of the buyer. So we're not just saying like, hey, buyer, look, you own a customer success motion. Look at what's possible from a data perspective if you do customer education. Well,
Right.
everybody, every customer education related tech company in the world is saying that. I think it's
Yeah.
what I'm seeing across different tech areas of focus is some smarter salespeople, some forward-leaning companies are tapping into the individual, and they're saying,
hmm
"Listen, Alex, like, tell me about your current remit, and tell me where you want to go." And so you
Yeah.
start talking about like what your goals are as a CE or a CS or as a sales support type leader. And I think
Yeah.
salespeople now are saying, "Well, that's great. Let me start to lay out a vision for you that demonstrates how you're going to use us as a advisor to get to this next career jump or this next role or demonstrate this impact on the business."
Mm.
I don't think that's bad. I think that's actually really smart. And I think if it's
Sure.
done from an authentic place, it could be a great way to build the relationship. The problem that I see today is that then so sales is like tapping into Alex's personal aspirations and making these sort of connections between utilizing the thing they're selling
Yeah.
and your ability to hit your personal goals,
Yeah.
not the departmental goals, like your personal career goals. And then they step aside and our implementation teams and our CS teams pick up this new client who the buyer has turned it over to her team to implement. The sales
Yeah.
guys turned it over to his team to implement. They start doing the work. Fast forward to the end of the year, and you've got a bunch of employees who are saying that they can't achieve the outcome
hmm
that the buyer bought
Right.
using the tool. There's something broken there.
Yeah.
And I think when I think back to the way I was laying out the brain science and thinking about attitude being caught and stuff, like then I think about where we are from CE. One thing I think we've got to be working on is that thing that I think is broken, the how we're selling it again. We kind of were there, we kind of got through it, and now it feels like
hmm
maybe we're back. Like we're selling this vision, and we're not doing a great job of making sure that the buyer's vision is achieved.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I'm trying to draw an analogy here, but
Doing
it's
that
kind
work,
of
by the way, I mean, doing that work, by the way, is an attitude that gets caught. Like
yeah.
we should be like promoting that sense that like it's not just about getting the client on board and utilizing the platform. It's actually about us believing as a company that we're going to help that client
Mhm.
achieve this sort of personal aspiration that we sold them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that practically everybody who listens to this podcast can resonate with that fact of, look, we've sold this thing to an individual who is nowhere to be found post sale, and that individual maybe checks in a year later and is like, well, this we what's going on here. In the meantime, it's like up to the post sale teams to really dig in and say, look, this isn't just speeds and feeds stuff. Like, what do you as an organization want to achieve? And obviously, there's career elements to that too as individuals, but like that digging in post sale to really understand like what are the challenges, and then from an education standpoint, it's like, sure, we need to give you some speeds and feeds and some how to's and some all that kind of stuff, but fundamentally, if you want to achieve X, this is what you're going to need to do with your organization and your operations and your data and your blah 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 and your blah 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 to make it happen, and be I guess what I'm saying is you got to be consultative about the whole thing versus
Yeah, we're gonna.
line iteming.
I'm sure we're gonna get into this. I don't want to jump the gun, but I think there's a conversation we're probably gonna have in a few minutes about where we'll dig into the strategy behind the education and why we educate on some things. There's there's two sides to that story. And I am hoping we get a chance to get into that today. I think
We're getting into it right now, my friend. Let's hit
I
me.
will,
Let's go.
I don't want to lead the conversation. I will follow your lead. I could talk all, I could take over.
Well, look, I mean, one of the things that we did talk about a little while ago, and I think you and I are both pretty passionate about, is this concept of what kind of YouTube University has done to our way of learning, because there's people out there like Gary Vaynerchuk and a bunch of other people, myself included, actually, that kind of are like, okay, what really is the ROI of higher education? Because unless you're wanting to become a brain surgeon or a lawyer, you really need all that kind of stuff. And it's like, just go to YouTube and learn some stuff. But at the same time, there's this fascinating book that I just read, Shop Class as a Soul Craft. Highly recommend it. It's by this guy named Matthew B. Crawford, and he is somebody who he was in corporate life and fully embedded, but kind of a side gig, just loved working with motorcycles and left all the corporate stuff to go start a motorcycle shop. And the whole book is about this notion of the fact that in this realm of where we are working in data and information and thought and all this kind of stuff, we're losing like this tangible craft mentality of pick this up, put this over there, like fix this carburetor to exacting standards, and like this specialization stuff. Like he was talking about this phenomenon where like shop class is disappearing from the United States. Like if you want to go buy some really cheap equipment, go to like school auctions and stuff like that, because they're shutting down shop classes left and right. It's crazy.
That makes so much sense, but that's disappointing and kind of crazy.
It's so disappointing. And so like when I think about how this manifests itself, like we're kind of becoming this land of generalists a little bit, and we can dabble in XYZ. But when it comes to like education, especially, I think there is this notion that, hey, look, there's great tools. Generative AI is out there. Like a lot of great innovations are coming at us at a quicker and quicker pace, but the fundamentals and the fundamental like truth of how humans learn and how humans ingest is like the craft that still needs to be there, and that human to human connection still needs to be there. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think that juxtaposition between YouTube University and like mastery is huge.
I've got a really okay. So we did have a great conversation about this a while ago, and let's bring it back. I think this is exciting and fascinating and really cool, and I have a really great client story to tell. I think all of that's true, and I think there's there's tons of research and literature that you can find about the impact of the pros and the cons of micro learning and bite-sized learning, and against the more traditional sort of series of steps that get you to some expertise in a topic. I think if we apply that though to business, if we think about it from a corporate education standpoint, like there's nothing wrong with bite-sized education activities. There's nothing wrong with using YouTube. We all use YouTube. Every company in the world now has its own, YouTube presence and is feeding content, videos, and podcasts like this, and everything else is going into YouTube. And like, maybe in a minute we'll come back to this idea of search and the ocean of content. But I mean, I think when I talk with clients that are doing this really well, they're not really focused on bite-sized video as that's not really the way the conversation unfolds. Really what we're talking about in most instances is education strategy, and it's got two main pillars. There should be formalized curriculum. This is content that is sequenced into context, and it's leading the learner towards mastery of a topic or a skill or a concept. Generally, there's some assessment or test or quiz at the end or throughout the thing, depending on its complexity and size. And then you're able as a learner to demonstrate proficiency. And at the end of that experience, demonstrate that you understand what you were just taught.
Yeah.
And I think from a corporate education perspective, we then talk about that. Like we have learning paths and we have courses and we have certifications. And I think like all of that is valid and important.
Yep.
And that is one pillar of a successful strategy. The second pillar is things that you can group into this bucket of reference materials.
Yeah.
To me, these are the one-off videos, the recorded webinars, live events, live training, things that stand alone, knowledge-based articles, reference guides, all of those things you could sort of bucket into this category called reference. And so you've got
or like performance support kind of stuff.
Totally. All the support documentation itself. I mean, you've got curriculum as a pillar, and that is part of the strategy. You've now got reference material, and that's part of the strategy. And I think what you're really trying to do then is create this environment where a learner has the opportunity to find the thing she's looking for. And so it may be that I am trying to learn a complex concept. Maybe I really want to understand a fundamental concept that's tied to the way I'm supposed to use this new software that we bought. Maybe I want to get certified as an admin on the software we just bought. And there are different motivations for those things, which we can dig into too. That's a time commitment. And it's probably going to happen in a series of steps. I'm probably not going to sit in front of the computer for 6 hours, but I will sort of invest in the 6 hours over time. Like that's something very different than I need to know how you guys handle API webhooks. And so I'm going to come into the destination. I'm going to be like API webhooks into the search bar. And I want to see the places where I can get the answer to my question.
Yeah.
This touches on another thing we can dig into too, but like, so you've got curriculum, you've got reference material. I think what we're really talking about is, I don't want to get hyper fixated on whether a bite-sized video, a YouTube-like experience is right or wrong. I think the question is, what is the education strategy?
Yeah.
How are you using those two pillars? What is the learner experience then that you are what learner experience are you leading that learner through? How are you making sure that she's getting to the right content when she needs it? And then it's like, how much of that is inside curriculum? How much of that is standalone in some kind of like easy to get to reference thing? And so I think when YouTube like videos that are specific about something are available and are directly related to what that person is looking for, it's wonderful. It's like the best way to get to information. I think showing that person how it fits into a broader curriculum or the concept is also available in this is also really important.
Yeah. I'm thinking about this in the context of obviously, some digital strategies since we are CE is like one of the cornerstones of a solid digital strategy, because you got part of it is like distributing the right content to the right person at the right time in the place where they are, right? And so this magic area between customer education and we'll say CE blankets like all of those resources, whether it be full-blown courseware or knowledge-based articles or whatever, but customer resources tied together with a solid digital strategy is really hard to nail down sometimes outside of like an onboarding flow or a pre-renewal flow. But like if your customer is like trying to predict your customer is struggling with XYZ, or I think this person probably needs this or whatever. Do you have any insight into like how to tie those things in programmatically in an effective way?
Yes, I have a lot I have a lot of things.
Okay, we'll see you later, folks.
Yeah, I know. So Alex, you can step away now, and I'll talk for the next 40 minutes and lecture on the ideas of strategy and ROI. If we accept this idea that we've got these sort of like two main pillars, there's actually a third. We think there's a third. There's curriculum, there's reference materials. I think there's also a clear use case and a need for something that's more interactive. So we think about it like an educated or an education dedicated forum. You can call it community. That word has can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different companies. So I'm not talking about launching another community. I'm saying inside the education environment, allowing two customers to talk to each other about the things learning in the environment becomes another way to make sure that that user or learner is getting to the right thing she needs at that time. So if I can get curriculum, if I can see the reference material, then I can see that somebody actually asked this question and there's a bunch of answers to the specific question I'm asking. That can also be valid. And you're doing it right. You're then the community manager, the forum managers, they're doing a good job of referencing back into the curriculum. To me, that's like the holy grail. It's like if we can get into that virtuous cycle, like you're doing something really right. The thing and pull me back if I'm going in the wrong direction here, but I think really what we're starting to get to is like, how do you take education strategy and turn it into ROI? I think that's what we're and again, if you want to
sure. No, it's absolutely
you can pull me back and tell me you want to go in a different direction.
No, this is great because hey everybody, just a quick break from today's show to introduce our sponsor for this episode, which is Lifetime Value Media. I've got Dylan Young, Chief Creative, with me. He's been helping me edit the show for the last couple of months or so, and it's been for me personally, it's been a massive time saver, and just having somebody who knows CS in my corner is absolutely great. But Dylan, do you want to tell us a little bit about Lifetime Value Media and what you're up to?
Yeah, we started Lifetime Value Media to serve what I believe is a void in the space with refreshing, educational, humorous content. On the flip side of that, we also help other folks that are creating content, upping the quality of their shows and also helping them reach new audiences if they're not already in the podcast or the video space.
Yeah, I mean, we've been making this show for about a year now. I should say I've been making this show for about a year now, and it takes a considerable amount of time to get in there and edit and find all the goodness and do all that. And now that you're doing that, it's helped me out tremendously. But to your point, you're not just helping existing shows, you're helping people who want to get into the space and just media content creation in general, right?
Yeah, we do find that there's a pretty wide gamut of folks that need these services. There's a lot of folks that want to just be the creative. They want to talk to their guests and hand the rest off. They don't want to have to learn editing software. They don't want to learn what's the best way to deliver their RSS feed to their audience members. There's a lot of folks who might have that down, but they don't get the YouTube distribution piece of it. A lot of other folks who don't know how to optimize any of it. And so we offer services that can help anybody in any situation. So everything I just explained is all existing folks who have some level of production already occurring. But we also do have packages for folks who want to get into the podcast space or the storytelling space in general. We can help them create entire brand kits. We can help them figure out their distribution model. We can help them figure out their voice in what is a crowded market. And then we can do all that stuff, the recording, the editing, distribution after the fact, all of the artwork that comes with it, the clips. We can do everything.
Yeah. Well, look, I appreciate what you do for the community. I appreciate what you do for this show and others, I might add. Looking forward to seeing who else you get to work with.
Thanks, Alex.
Hey, I want to have a brief chat with you about the show. Did you know that roughly 60% of listeners aren't actually subscribed to the show on whatever platform they're listening to it on? Now, as you know, algorithms love likes, follows, subscribes, comments, all of that kind of stuff. So if you get value out of the content, you listen regularly, and you want to help others to discover the content as well, please go ahead and follow the show, leave a comment, leave a review. Anything that you want to do there really helps us to grow grow organically as a show. And while you're at it, go sign up for the companion newsletter that goes out every week at digitalcustomersuccess.com. Now, back to the show. It's great because getting to ROI, like pinning ROI on learning and training, is an insanely difficult thing.
It's hard. It can be hard. I don't think it needs to be. And the reason I kind of jumped here again is because I think how to get the content in front of the person is certainly important, and it's a big part of the initiative.
Yeah,
I think it's secondary. I think there's something that comes before. How do we make sure that our digital strategy is aligned and that the content's appearing in the right places? And we can talk through that for sure. I think I alluded to this a little bit earlier. So saying it slightly differently, I think where customer education folks struggle is turning the data that's related to the consumption of content into some kind of ROI. So if we think about our internal education folks, they are delivering content like compliance related things, skills, content. They're helping learners level up. I mean, all of that can be measured and justified on things like completions. Like you want more of your employees doing the thing. And so it's like, that's a good thing. And we tie it to employee engagement and satisfaction, and it's good.
Yeah.
When we're doing things that touch customers, it's not enough. And it's especially not enough right now. So we all know that we've got friends and colleagues that are being downsized. Teams are being downsized. They're being moved. There's just a lot of flux right now in education. And I think it's more important now than ever that we can point to ROI.
Because I mean, like ultimately, you've got if you're in the luxury of being in a SaaS or supporting a SaaS platform that like has maybe 4 intended outcomes for most customers, that's a luxurious place to be, because then you can like programmatically say, look, to get to here, take these courses, this blah 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 blah, boom, and then you can measure like, okay, uptake and feature and all that kind of stuff. But like the reality of it is that I don't know very many people that live in that kind of environment, because we're supporting multiple products, and in some cases some are on-prem and not SaaS and all over here, and you've got agents, blah blah blah, and customizations and all this kind of stuff, which is where the whole thing gets just crazy.
Sure. So I came armed with a little bit of data today, and
cool.
I'll share it now. Just 3 bullet points, and so we're in a second round of research with Forrester. So we just published it. You can go to the Intellum site. You can get it. It talks about the economic impact of customer education. So it goes through in great detail what successful companies are seeing. And so the 3 that I pulled out for today are that when executed correctly, on average, successful companies are seeing a 35% increase in average lifetime value of a customer when they're fully educated.
Dang.
They're seeing a 30% increase in closed won opportunities, which I want to come back to in a minute. They're seeing a 25% increase in customer retention. So those are great. And those are the kind of numbers we all want to be able to stand in front of the board or stand in front of leadership and say, this program that I own or that I help drive is making this kind of impact. The challenge again is correlating the consumption of what we see in the actual learning environment, the engagement, the completions, the assessment scores. How do you take that and turn that into average lifetime value? How do you turn that into customer retention? How do you use education to reduce cost? That's another big one. There's massive cost cutting through education. And I think what I don't see enough of when I look broad, have a wonderful advantage. I get to look across a bunch of programs. As a practitioner, we might have experience with 2 or 3 places where we've worked. I get to look across like 200 to 300 at a time, which is a
amazing.
wonderful place to sit and look at trends and patterns and all that kind of stuff. And I think that one of the things that we recognize, the companies that achieve these kinds of impacts, they don't fall there accidentally. And they certainly don't try at the end of the year or before the next board meeting or when there's suddenly rumors of an impending rift. Like, they don't start then trying to dig into data like completions and magically divine some kind of correlation. They start the beginning of their training year with a plan.
Yeah.
The plan is built off the business outcome that they think is the most important during this year to the company. So generally, those are things like driving more revenue or cutting costs.
Yeah.
And we can use the cost cutting one as an example because it's easy to talk through. So what I watch these teams do is they say, okay, this year we're going to focus a chunk of our time on cost reduction. And then they say, all right, from an education perspective, what initiatives are most likely to lead to a reduction in cost? And so they'll say, well, we have been working with the support team, and support is recognizing a massive increase in tickets right now. Okay, so the education team can form a hypothesis. We think that there's all these tickets related to the platform. We've noticed they're all primarily year 1, year 2 users. We think that onboarding, when we went and looked at onboarding wasn't very good. So we think that's the problem. We think the onboard content is not comprehensive enough, or it's not updated enough, or it's not engaging enough, whatever that is. They're going to then work on creating an onboarding initiative that is aimed at ticket reduction. So they're going to look at the patterns and trends they see in the tickets. They're going to use that to influence the creation of a new onboarding initiative. They're going to run the onboarding initiative. They're going to get to the 6-month mark, and they're going to say, of the users that completed, of the new customers who completed the new onboarding content, are they more likely or less likely to submit a ticket compared to the new users who took the previous onboarding content? We know the average cost of a ticket. When you can demonstrate that this subset of users submits way less tickets, you've made the kind of impact on cost reduction that it's still a correlation, but it's a pretty strong one. Yeah. You can do the same thing with revenue. You can look at your cross-sell and upsell strategies as a company. Education team can get with sales, get with the growth team, understand what the cross-sell and upsell goals are, what their strategies are for doing that. You can look at the big chunk of content that onboarding is always an option here. Certification can be an option here. There's this big bucket of like just general skills and enablement type content where you're just teaching people about the platform. But when you begin to define a learning initiative that's aimed, and by initiative, I mean content that's organized specifically under this initiative type. When you can say, we're going to create an initiative that's aimed at this cross-sell opportunity. And then you can demonstrate that when users are fully educated in that initiative, they are more likely to agree to cross-sell or upsell. Now you're driving revenue. And by the way, the end result of this is that if I come back to the closed one opportunity, which frankly 30% was a bigger number than I expected.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm elated to see it, but it's a bigger number than I expected. What that says to me is that there are teams right now that are pulling education forward in the sales cycle. They are intentionally building content and experiences to educate the prospect. If I say it a little differently, the ones that are ahead here are the ones that have established a definition for an education qualified lead. They are scaling EQLs now that they've got a definition for it. They are, interestingly, this requires even faster, more consistent iteration. And so they've sort of figured out this definition for EQL. They figured out like how it gets handed off. And now they're testing like the impact of how likely an educated EQL is to convert to SQO than a marketing qualified one. That is a whole other door. But at the end of the day, the thing that makes me the most excited about that is that it takes our education leader and it now puts the education leader in a seat at the revenue acquisition table, as opposed to just being on the renewal side conversation. I think that's the next frontier. It's super exciting.
That's interesting. A couple things that I gleaned from that was, first and foremost, I think the intentionality of it all, because going into this stuff with kind of like, oh, we're seeing this, so let's just do this, and okay, great, we've done that, check, let's go on to the next thing. For early stage companies, that's probably what you have to do. Just to like block and tackle and get her done.
That's your table stakes idea. Yeah,
exactly. But if you really want to build like this stellar learning organization focused on customer retention, it's got to be like this intention of, okay, here's a problem that this leader has. Here's a problem that this leader has. Our CEO is focused on these things. The board is focused on these things. And here are the problems that are in the way to get us to those things. You identify those things and you say, okay, here's my hypotheses, as you were saying, like we think that by educating XYZ cohort on this, we should be able to blah, 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 blah. You get some pre and post measurements in place and you go to town. And I think that is such a great way of going about it, not just from a, hey, let's measure our success perspective, but like, let's go in and measure our failures as well. Like, where do we not hit the mark, and why didn't we hit the mark? And let's go back and see if we can hit the mark. I think that's super cool. The other thing that I'm excited about those benchmarks that you were giving is because benchmarks like that are not easily found in CE from my perspective. Like,
that's right.
It's like kind of like, okay, we think this is going to happen or whatever, but if you can benchmark like your own revenue generation or closed won leads or whatever it is against a benchmark that exists, like the stuff that you're doing with Forrester, I think that's super powerful, because then it gives you a sense for like how your program is performing in comparison to others in the industry.
Yeah, man. So one quick thing, the Forrester data is really interesting because we did it in 2019 and now we've done it again in 2024. So there's not only like the 2024 new fresh data that says like, hey, here's what you can achieve. There's also, if you really want to dig into it, like looking at the change in those numbers from 2019.
Pre and post pandemic.
5 years, post pandemic. Yeah. All of that stuff is really interesting to me. We could do there's a whole section.
Yeah, it's like caveat, the world fell apart between these two numbers.
Well, and frankly, maybe responsible for some of those numbers going up. But I think there's something like really that also I think gets lost as we start getting into these big numbers. It's like, I know CE leaders that are like, my assumption is that like, that's unlimited budget, some huge company. I've got 3 people. I've got a really tight budget. The budget is shrinking. And I want to dispel that a little bit. I don't think it requires anything significant to get to these numbers. In fact, I think that even the largest, longest running initiatives, so huge companies that have just like humongous catalogs, like the catalog size doesn't matter. The volume of content doesn't matter. And I think even when we look at larger running, like huge catalogs, huge initiatives, lots of resources, they're still doing the same thing. Like we're still looking at the annual goal. We're creating an initiative that's going to address the goal. We're demonstrating impact on the goal, because like we have to do support. We all know that. We have to do documentation. We all know that. We're going to create curriculum. We're going to have courses. We're going to have certifications. We're going to have all of that's going to exist. I think what we have to be careful to do is look at the year, look at the company goals, identify which initiative types are going to get us there, double down on the content this year that's in that type, decide if it works, make quick changes if it doesn't, test those changes all the time, and then give the business a goal. Give them the hypothesis. We think we can make a 10% improvement on retention this year by launching a new onboarding course. We think better onboarded customers are more likely to renew at the end of their year. Like, that's all it is. It doesn't matter how many customers.
And by the way,
catalog size,
like 10% retention increase in some businesses is a shit ton of money.
It's a shit ton of money. And that's what, like, Forrester goes out and interviews, like, whatever it is, like 500 customer education leaders from all over the place. And the average number is that it's 25%. They're making a 25% impact on customer retention through education. And this brings up a whole nother point, which is, like, by the way, I want to, like, give the shout out and the love to all my, like, customer education professionals, because, like, I think a good bit of this is, like, unsung hero stuff. Like,
I agree completely.
Like a lot of people are doing a lot of great work. We just don't have the mechanics in place to measure and track it necessarily. And so I often wonder, like, when we start working with new customers or people that are bringing programs over to the Intellum platform, it's like, I don't know that the thought process here is always like, let's go blow up what we have and start over with this rebuild that's going to get us to this customer retention improvement. I mean, I think what's actually more common or more needed is, like, we're not sure what the impact is that we're making today. And so let's get really, like, clear on how we're going to measure what we think works. And so there's strategies around, I mean, every company is different. My high level answer when people say, okay, I believe you, all this stuff sounds great, but you're not actually telling me what to do. So I'm an education leader. I've got this environment. I can track and report on what I can track and report on, generally learning outcomes. How do I get to the business stuff? Now, every company's going to be different. And my short answer is go make some friends. Yeah. You know, like, there's people, like, on the revenue ops side that have the per customer spend. Now, in every company, are you going to get that per customer? No, they're going to tell you, like, that's against policy, which is totally fine, because you know what your reaction is? Your reaction is like, okay, cool, here's what I'm going to do. I know the customers because we have some customer identification. Like, maybe it's a unique customer code that lives
Salesforce in ID or something like that. Yeah.
Something, right? So I've got this customer code. I have a list of learners who have completed content. I'm going to give you that list. I don't care what their individual spend is. What I want you to do, RevOps, is take this list of people and tell me, on average, did they spend more money? Are they, if we're working on cross-sell, upsell, did these people spend more money after this date?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, that's all you need to prove to the business. This group of people who are fully educated are more likely to spend more money. That's where budget and investment comes from.
Yeah, that's
one last thought.
So huge.
None of this works right now. None of it works unless the business is investing in education. Lots of businesses are going the other way. So I think it's going to be really hard to be like, hey, we made this massive increase on revenue if the business isn't investing in you making a huge increase in revenue. And so what I hope is that all that Forrester data, go get all that data, build your business case for why right now the business should be supporting you, and then you can go demonstrate that it works.
And that's where that relationship bit comes in so handy, because having spent some time as a CE leader myself, like, it can get very easy to just go into a silo, go into a bubble, do what you need to do, get the stuff out, get content cranking. But you got to spend as much time in the political and kind of relationship arena as you do kind of in the tactical arena. And I think that's That's also, quite frankly, where I think you have an edge, because you do have that marketing pedigree and you know what it takes to like change hearts and minds and convince people. And I think that's probably a massive consulting opportunity for y'all as well, as you go into new accounts. Is like, hey, let's set the stage for everybody.
One of the things when we prepped for this, you'd ask me to think through, and I'll just drag us here right now as
let's do it.
Get in. You'd ask me about mistakes, and I think you're absolutely right. Sidebar really quickly. There is a growing trend of education moving to marketing. And so I don't think education folks that aren't marketers or early in their career should fear that. I think it's actually that there's a lot of benefits. You asked me to do a couple of things. One was think about mistakes, and one was to think about people. And so I'll actually combine two of those. Somebody to take a look at. There's a guy named Andrew DeBell at Atlassian. So full disclosure, Andrew at Atlassian are clients. Andrew has a great talk track that he did at Sedma about why rolling over into marketing has been a great thing for them. And I watched him do this presentation. It was really insightful, really eye-opening. I'm hoping that Sedma's got it up on the site. If not, we'll try.
If it is, I'll link it.
Yeah, if not, we'll strong arm Andrew into doing it again someplace where we can all watch it. But it was really great, and he just sort of talked about what all the benefit is. But as an example, the thing we're talking about, like this struggle to, you can have the plan to get to the ROI, but you have to get somebody to either give you the correlating data that shows the impact, or you've got to, you've either got to get it yourself, or you got to get them to do the thing, like I said, where you just sort of say, okay, fine, just tell me on average what the impact is here.
Yeah.
So one of the things he talked about was like, man, the truth is we were over here and it was really hard for us to get data. And then we moved over here, and all of a sudden we have access to all the things. We have access to all the data. We can get all the data, and the relationships are already there. So I think the market, like people worry about where CE is going to go. And I don't know that it matters. When you see things like education go to market, can be a huge benefit. The marketing thing, I think, is important. One mistake that I have made, and that I think other educators have made, is not thinking about marketing, like not wanting to think about marketing. And I think education wants to be something that's not marketing. I think there's a lot of education people, myself included, who will stand up and say, education and marketing are very different things. Marketing has no place in your education environment. The way you convince somebody to do something from a sales and marketing perspective is very different from the way you teach somebody to do it. When you put marketing materials into your education environment, you're diluting blah, blah, blah. Like, I think all of that's still true. I think the thing we miss, though, is that education, especially customer education, is still a reach and frequency game. Yeah. And the basic tenet of marketing is reach and frequency. How many people are we getting in front of, and how often are we getting in front of them? And so I think there are lessons we can learn from our friends in marketing about how to constantly promote the existence of this education environment that literally no learner or user has to do anything in. They don't have to do anything. And so all the time, even big companies, I'll see them launch something and be like, hooray, we launched this awesome customer education environment, and then never think through what they're proactively doing to drag those people back into the education environment consistently. So I think that's can be a huge mistake.
If you build it, they will come is a very rare thing. Like
maybe one time.
Like OpenAI, of course, you build it, they came. But like, hey, we launched this thing, great, okay, cool. But I mean, to your point though, like if you think of the Venn diagram of customer education and marketing, yes, there's different things. There's different intention, different audience. You're going to do learning objectives and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff over here. Whereas here, you're going to focus on your CTAs and where da. But the overlap, when you think about the reach, when you think about the branding, when you think about like the voice and the data and the connections and the blah, 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 like the overlap is just as much as the differences, I think. So that's a super brilliant point to start to close out our conversation, which I'm crazy sad about because I've really enjoyed it, which is obvious because we're way over time, and I hope I'm not making you late for your next meeting.
Well, I can wait. This is important.
Ask you a little bit about like, what's in your content diet? Like, what are you paying attention to? What's the stuff that you read on a daily basis?
Well, so I read a lot of comic books. That's super important. I'm a big Batman fan.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. That's daily diet stuff. It always has been. You can learn a lot from Bruce Wayne, actually. Not just that having unlimited funds is the ultimate superpower.
Yeah, we don't need to know where that money comes from.
No, we don't. But totally, that's always been history. But be prepared for every eventuality is actually the lesson. I think that's a good one. I have a 9-year-old daughter. We watch a lot of kids shows. So taking those things out of it, there's this digital customer success podcast that I listen to a lot. This guy, Alex, is pretty great. So I highly recommend that people,
Flatty check.
I highly recommend that people pay attention. If you probably do know him, but my boy Jay Nathan has always created great content, and it's evolved over time. He's got 2 newsletters that happen every week, as an example, that I consume every week. One's called Growth Curve, and the other one is called The Middle.
Yeah, that's right.
Both of those
He's on 2 episodes ago.
Oh, great. Yeah. So see, further proof that you should be listening to the digital success. So I think that from a sort of like real-time content perspective, those are 2 go-tos for me. I think there's folks to follow. Andrew DeBell on LinkedIn says a lot of really interesting stuff, and I think he's worth looking at. There's a great sidebar story there about it that we didn't get to, but about Atlassian and YouTube specifically. How they have embraced this massive community of people creating how-to videos about Atlassian tools that Atlassian historically didn't have any sort of like relationship with or interaction with. And so they've been incredibly smart about how they have created a bi-directional like content creation relationship. Really cool. He talks a lot about stuff. He's really great.
User-generated content.
Oh yeah, man. That whole story is really interesting. And I kudos to Atlassian because I think they're doing it exactly right. They've embraced it and really, really done a great job supporting the community there. Dee Capilla is doing some really cool stuff. So if you don't know her, she's at Miro. I think a lot of the things that she talks about resonate with me when I'm looking at her posts and her content. The difference between us is that like I have like 200 like SaaS tech clients like in Google or at Meta or Atlassian or Amazon or whatever. Yeah. She's got like 60 million customer users. So like the scale is mind blowing to me. And she talks about really cool stuff. I think those are great examples.
Yeah. Good call on D. I'm just looking back. I think she was kind of early on one of my guests, but she's a local Austinite and funny stories. I used to work with her husband, which is kind of cool. But yeah, so it's just kind of a small Austin world. Yeah, she was episode 38, so not too long ago. But what she does, and she doesn't talk about it enough. Like she's the model for CX period, I think. Modern CX.
For sure.
That's awesome.
Sure. My book stack is enormous. I mean, I don't know that I'm ever going to get through all the books.
Right.
There's so many. I was thinking about pulling them all over and going through them one at a time, but I don't think you might.
You have to send me it.
Actually, that's a lie. I'll do 2. So hold on. So quickly, 2 that I'm really excited about reading. I'm late on this one, but Leadership Revolution.
Cool. Okay.
I think is going to be really great. There's a really cool company called Sounding Board, and Lori Mazan is one of their founders. They do like like executive leadership coaching, and just have amassed a lot of information. And I highly respect both of them. And I think this book's going to be great. I've never read it, but I'm about to. It's the Creative Act is the name of the book by Rick Rubin.
It's so good.
Yeah, if you think and you're into
so good.
Yeah, it's always been on the list. I've never done it. I'm like, all right, I'm going in.
My recommendation would actually be to go to Audible and listen to him
talk about it.
Yeah. It's so good. That's a good one.
That's awesome.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate all those resources, links, shout outs, all that kind of stuff. We'll put it in the show notes for everybody to digest. And most importantly, I appreciate your time and your knowledge and your insights and your crazy smart mouth words.
I'm honored to be on the podcast. There's so many like important people that have been on here. Just the chance to have my name in the list is an honor. So
yeah, no worries. You belong right among them. So thanks for the time.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital CX Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. It really helps us to grow and provide value to a broader audience. You can view the Digital Customer Success Definition Word Map and get more information about the show and some of the other things that we're doing at digitalcustomersuccess.com. This episode was edited by Lifetime Value Media, a media production company founded by our good mutual friend Dylan Young. Lifetime Value aims to serve the content, video, audio production needs of the CS and post-sale community. They're offering services at a steep discount for a limited time, so navigate to lifetimevaluemedia.com, go have a chat with Dylan, and make sure you mention the Digital CX Podcast sent you. I'm Alex Turkovich. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
What's up, guys? It's Dylan here. I hope you enjoyed this show. If you're running a podcast and you need some help, or you're interested in starting one from scratch, give us a shout and let's talk about how it is we can help you. Reach out to us at lifetimevaluemedia.com and let's get started.